What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Fearless Fly 100. Thank you for joining me again. Well, I haven't made a video in a little while. We've been working a little bit and kind of relaxing a little bit here recently because things are starting to slow down a little bit. But now we're getting to the point where I'm getting some more work that I need to do, particularly this one back here. Yep, that's one of mine. Actually, it belongs to the wife. That's an 05, the 05 GMC Envoy that we have. That one there, as you can probably see, I don't know if you can tell a little bit, it's been sitting for a little while in that spot. The transmission wind up not working on that vehicle one day, so we towed it home, and that's where it's been ever since. And if it looks kind of cloudy around here, yeah, we've been having some storms that's been rolling through here recently today, and you never know what could happen because right now I've been having a little bit of lightning that's been happening too, so you know, just to add to the special effects, I guess you can say, to the video. And over here off to the north, you can't see it, but over in front of me, it's dark as can be too, and it's raining up north of here. But anyways, yep, that's what this video is going to be about, is getting this 05 GMC Envoy fixed. We're going to pull the transmission out, and I'm going to go through that and show you what all is involved in pulling the transmission out. This one here is 4x4, so it's got a transfer case on it. It's got a draft shaft going to the front differential. It's got a front differential in it, and it's 4x4. There's a little bit more involved in it, you know, pulling the transfer case out, but it's nothing that I can't handle. I've done bigger trucks with being 4x4 as well. So let's get it in the shop and let's start looking at it, and let's figure out how we're going to take this thing apart and pull the transmission out of it. All right, now we got the Envoy in the shop, and as you can see, it's kind of dirty just sitting in here, but we're going to start working on it and working on getting the transmission pulled out. First thing I'm going to do, even though it sits up pretty high, as you can see, it's pretty high off the ground, on the ground clearance with the bigger tires that we put on it, but I'm still going to put it up on jack stands because I'm going to be on a creeper and I need a little bit more space up underneath of it. So let's go ahead and put it up on jack stands and start working on it. So I'm going to start with the back end here. I'm going to put the jack up underneath the rear differential, and then I'm going to put the jack stand on the up close or in the middle of the rear axle. Okay, back it up higher enough to get the wheels up off the ground. And now we're going to jack up the front end, but it's going to be a little bit different to get the front wheels off the ground. I'm going to jack up on the frame of the vehicle and then put the jack stands on the frame. That way they are not in my way whenever I'm underneath working on getting the transmission out. Now that I've got it up off the ground, next thing I'm going to do is pull the oil pan off of the bottom of the transmission. As you can see, there are quite a few bolts that hold that transmission pan on. And the reason why I'm taking off the transmission pan is to be a little bit lighter, taking it out, for one, with less fluid, and two, whenever I take out the dipstick tube, it's not going to make a mess all over the ground. So let's get started. Let's take off all the bolts and take the oil pan off and drain all the oil out of it. And you can come down now anytime. Anytime now, you can come down. Let's take a look at this pan now that, now that I got it off and into the light a little bit. You can see it's really dark. It should be like a pinkish color, so to speak, and then there's a whole bunch of metal shavings in it too. So, and you can tell it's been off because of the sealer that's on with the gasket. That's part of it, which is not a bad thing. I mean, it looks like they were doing service to it, but yeah, it could have been much better with the fluid and everything. So, yep, with almost 200,000 miles on it, yeah, I think it's time for a rebuild on this thing. Next thing I'm going to do before I pull or start removing the transfer case is drain it also. Right there, there's a plug with a hex insert in it right there to where a hex socket goes into. And I'm going to go ahead and drain it as well. That way it won't be so heavy taking it out and won't be such a mess whenever I pull the drive shaft out on the from the output shaft. Next thing I'm working on is trying to get this drive shaft out that goes to the transfer case to the rear differential. It's got 2 bolts on this side with the strap to hold the U-joint on this side, and then if we rotate it around, it's also got 2 more on that side to hold that cap of the U-joint as well. So let's take it apart and get the drive shaft out of the transfer case up there. Now you would think after taking the bolts and the straps off that this thing would come falling right out, right? Nope, not this one. I think this one here has got the original U-joints in it. As you can see right here, there's still a little part that they put in from the factory to hold the caps in the shaft of the U-joint. I mean, yeah, in the shaft of the U-joint. So what I like to do is just take a pry bar and just gently pry it and work it off. Now I'm up to the front drive shaft. Now remember, this thing was 4-wheel drive, so it's got a front differential as well, and a drive shaft going from the transfer case all the way up to the front. This one here is going to be a little bit easier because the shaft is a little bit smaller, so all I have to do is put my socket on it like that with my little battery operated impact, and they come off just like that. And now I'm on to removing the transfer case from the back of the transmission. And the reason why I'm moving the transfer case is because of a little bit of weight reduction. Now, I'm removing the transfer case, and in order to do that, there's a bolt here on the bottom, right there. There's a couple more on this side, and then there's a couple more on the passenger side of the vehicle. I don't know if you can see them. Yeah, there's one there. There's one right below it as well. So we're removing all the bolts already, and also I figured out the way to get the front drive shaft off of the spines on the differential as well. So I've loosened it up, and as you can see, when I loosened it up, a whole bunch of fluid came out, and I didn't have a bucket on the floor, so it's kind of spilled on the floor and got all over me. So I was kind of in the way and had to change a shirt. Ruined a good shirt, but anyways, I had plenty of shirts to put back on. Anyways, so that's what we're working on now, is getting this transfer case out. And once I got the last nut off, I'm going to use the floor jack to help me get it down to the ground. Well, here's a better angle of the transmission on the back side. As you can see, we've got the transfer case out. It's sitting over there on a dolly. That way it's not that hard to move it around. You don't have to break your back or anything. And next thing we're going to do is start pulling the transmission out, starting with the torque converter nuts. But if you notice, there's a few wires that go along with that transfer case. And this vehicle here, being that it's an 05, it's already 16 years old and 200,000 miles, you can see that they got these little clips on these little connectors. Now over here, I've already broken one little connector there because it's just so brittle. I don't know if you can see it. Come on, focus. Focus, focus, focus. I know it's not a Ford, but anyways. And these here have the little clips on there. One thing I would recommend is a little pocket screwdriver. Come on, focus. There you go. A little pocket screwdriver in order to get things apart gently. I know if some of y'all are like me, are pretty picky about stuff and leaving stuff like it is. So we got all them plugs taken off, and now we're working on disconnecting stuff for the transmission. I already got that big plug off the Prindle switch, and then I'm gonna start working on getting the lines off. These here are fuel lines that run on this side, so all I gotta do is unbolt the little clamps that hold them up there, and then there's another one on the side up there holding it up, so I'm gonna unbolt that one. But then if you look over here on the other side, it's kind of hard to see. There's some more wires going right there on top of the transmission, so I'm gonna have to lower it down to get to those wires before I pull it out. And then the transmission lines run right here, so I'm gonna take that shield off and access those lines up top. They got little clips that hold them in, just take them off. And they make a special tool for that too, for the little C-clips. And then there's bolts all around the belt housing I'm gonna have to take off. So let's get into it. Now we're working on getting the bolts out of the torque converter. As you can see right there, there's a bolt hole on the torque converter that goes through the flywheel. Now the only access point that there is to get to the bolts is through that little hole right there. Okay, as you can see, I've already taken one bolt out, and that's with an 8mm hex bit. Okay, come on, focus, focus, focus. In the middle. Now you could use a socket, but I don't know if the sockets that I have would fit, so I used a hex bit in the middle of the bolt to get it out. Now, in order for me to get the bolts exactly lined up in that hole, I have to put a ratchet and a socket on the crankshaft here in the front. I'll get it for you. Here on the front crankshaft bolt in order to turn the engine. Because as I'm turning the engine, the flywheel and torque converter is turning at the same time. So I've got everything lined up. I had to take off a bracket right here on the frame in order to gain access to that bolt right there on the crankshaft. So let's get busy. I don't know if there's like 3 or 5 or 15 bolts on the torque converter, but we'll get them all out. The one thing I need to do first before I go any further is to remove this dipstick tube because I need to get it out of my way whenever I pull the transmission out. I won't be able to get the transmission out with that in the transmission. So just one little 10mm nut, I pull it out of the way, and I'm going to pull it out of the transmission and get it out of my way. Now I'm working on getting the oil cooler lines off from the transmission itself. As you can see, there's a little black plastic holder that keeps the little clip from coming out. Now you can see the clip right about in that area there where that fitting is. So they make a special tool for that little clip there as well to get that line out. So here we go. Now I've got to take out the starter because if you notice that bolt right there towards the bottom of the screen is going through the block, and I think it goes through the transmission. I know the other bolt that holds the starter goes all the way through the belt housing because I can see threads on the other side from the top. So now we're going to take out the starter from the block. So I'm in between the body and the transmission. I've got the cross member out now of the transmission and lowered the transmission down a little bit. But I've got these 2 bolts right there where that line comes directly across. There's 2 bolts that hold that line as well as hold the transmission onto the block. So I am working on trying to get those bolts out. So from there all the way back, hold on. To right here to the back of the transmission is a long ways. So I'm gonna have to put some extensions together and a socket and all that just to be able to get to those 2 bolts that are up there on the top of the transmission. Well, there you go, folks. Just like that, I got those 2 bolts out that have that line running across the top. Plus, if you look over here towards the right side, there was 2 more bolts that I needed to get out right above that that line right there for the bell housing. But not to worry, I still have a couple of bolts on the bottom holding the transmission in, and all that's left is to get the rest of the bolts out. So here's the combination I had to use to get to the bolts on the transmission. A couple of 1/2-inch drive extensions, and then an adapter, and then a long extension that's 3/8 drive to the socket, plus a 1/2-inch drive ratchet in order to break everything loose. And then once I got the bolts loose and unthreaded and everything, they were still in the in the slot where the bolts go. So I had to use this little device here to grab a hold of the bolts to get them out. Now with this device, I push this end here, and then the other end, it's got some claws that come out just like that to grab a hold of the bolts. So that worked really well in order to get the bolts out and be able to keep them to install them whenever we're ready to put it back in. And that, folks, is what she looks like out of the vehicle. As you can see, the transfer case is off of it. I tried taking the bell housing off, but the bolts were stripping because they have the Torx headed bolts, so I decided to leave the bell housing on it. And now we're going to load it up into the pickup truck somehow and take it to the transmission shop to have it rebuilt and all fixed up. Well, I finally got the transmission loaded in the truck. It wasn't easy, but even though it weighs about a couple 100 pounds, but we got it loaded in the truck. Also, to go with the transmission, also got torque converter to go with it. I also threw in the bolts too for the pan whenever they go back together with it. So now we're going to be headed to transmission shop to drop it off to get it fixed. Well, there you go, folks. That's the conclusion of our journey. We dropped off the transmission, and it's at the transmission shop waiting to be repaired. And then probably in a week or so, we're gonna get it and put it back in the Envoy. I appreciate it, everybody watching, and that is pretty much it for 2021. 2022 is coming up quick, and this is the last video of 2021. I appreciate everybody who has stuck with me along this journey up to this point, and I appreciate the new subscribers who have subscribed to the channel here recently. Yeah, 2022 is coming up pretty quick, and we've got a lot that is going to be on the channel. Starting off with that one right there. Yes, the 83 F-150 is coming back on the channel. There's going to be a whole bunch of videos on that one and everything that I'm doing to that truck, as well as the excuse me, as well as the part of the big change that's coming to the channel as well. You don't want to miss it. 2022 is going to be exciting, and it's going to have a lot of content as far as video is concerned on the channel. I can't wait to fill y'all in on the big change that is coming. That's going to be a whole separate video on its own. You want to stay tuned for that, because I don't think y'all are going to want to miss what's about to take place for 2022. I appreciate everybody who has subscribed to the channel recently and who has stuck with me with this journey that I'm on and with all the mechanical stuff that I've been doing. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Catch me on Instagram at FearlessFly100, as well as on TikTok at FearlessFly101. Again, I appreciate everybody for watching. Y'all stay safe. Y'all stay well. And we'll catch you in 2022 on the next video.